Um, Now, all right. There we go. Now it's recording. I'm really sorry about that.
No problem.
We are not used to using Zoom as a platform. We usually use like Microsoft Teams, those sort of things for college, so we.
Okay,
All right.
no problem.
So now we can begin. Well, my name is Maria Jose. I am the girl that contacted you via email. And these other two ladies are my friends and my group partners. We're best friends, and we like to call ourselves Team D, as a kind of inner joke that we have.
Yeah, nice.
And well, I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Camila Camposelillo, and thank you so much for being here today with us. We really believe and support the idea of your company.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carolina Maldonado. I'm very excited to do this interview.
Great. Nice to meet you all.
All right. First of all, how are you?
How am I? I'm doing all right. It's COVID-19 is very difficult to run a company, especially a physical sciences company during a pandemic, but we're doing pretty well. So I'm doing all right, ups and downs.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy about that you're well.
Thank you.
So first of all, I'm going to ask you to forgive us, for our English. It's a bit broken because it's not our first language. We speak Spanish. We don't speak English.
Yes.
So before we begin with the question, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background story.
Sure.
We are international trade engineering students at the Universidad Tecnológica Metropolitana, or UTEM, and we're in our 4th year already. So hopefully next year we're going to be able to call ourselves engineers. Hopefully, nice. Life happens, so we don't know. So we are having a subject called market research, and our teacher is Patricio Torres. He told us about you, and we were assigned to write an article about a topic of our choice. We decided to choose synthetic meat because at first we didn't really know about its existence, and we decided, well, it seems really interesting, and especially now during this pandemic and considering the whole zoonotic origin of it. So we decided to do about that. And our teacher saw that we were doing about it, and he told us, I know this guy, he has a company of synthetic meat. And we're like, wow, that's insane. And we look up your company, and we're like, well, this is like perfect. It's exactly what we need. So we told him that we will be happy to be able to talk with you. So he gave us your contact information. And well, then I sent you an email, and the rest of the story. Now we're here. So we're going to ask you a question related to that. So my friend Camila is going to begin with the first questions.
Yes, so well, let's begin. First question, what is the reason behind the creation of your company? This in terms of what made you wanted to do it?
Well, so I have a background in engineering, so chemical engineering, and then research and industrial automation. So I was 12 years in that industry and interacted with a lot of companies, to both deep research companies, but then also companies that are making products. And my background is making those products better, faster, cheaper. So just making a lot more of them. So increasingly, I began to think about the future of humanity, what we're all doing, and kind of looking at the biggest problems that is facing humanity and our planet and other earthlings on this planet. And I saw that my work as enabling a lot of the harm that I saw in the world. So I wasn't helping to make the world a better place. I think I was actually making it a worse place. And so I exited that industry and I went on a sabbatical, just basically 2 years where I didn't work. I just went and I researched, I traveled, and I tried to figure out what it is that I really should be doing, what the biggest problems are, and then how to face that. And the more I researched this field of meat alternatives and specifically in cultivated meat or making meat directly from animals outside of an animal, the more it was very obvious that I found what I'm looking for. So I do this for the environmental, human health, and animal welfare. Like those three reasons are the biggest reasons I do this in order to make a dramatic change in the way we consume meat.
Yes, yes, I agree. Climate change and even the suffer of the animals are really important topics that have to be talked and developed. And for that, we really need help. So it's great that people like you can use their knowledge to do better. You know, this has the possibility to people like us from the South America, that we can be able to eat a safer food. But we know there is so many factors that restrict that. And so was it difficult to have support to your idea in terms of the investors, or even in the approval of the customers?
Well, getting investment is always difficult. So venture capitalists. So there's a few sources of money. So you can get it from venture capitalists, which is institutional investment, as in it's their job to invest, and that's what they take other people's money and they invest it, and they invested in early stage companies like ourselves. So you're held to a very high standard. So they're judged on how well they pick companies. So they make sure that you are a company worth picking. And so there's that it's not easy. And there's also angels, which would be individual people with money. And so we've taken money from both people. As an increasingly larger company, you'll take more and more from venture capitalists and then from other types of sources of capital as well. So we've taken it from a variety of sources. So it's never easy. You do have to show an extreme amount of diligence. So you have to show that you're the right team, that this is the right problem to work on, that you have the right solution, and that you're differentiated from your potential competitors, and that you can kind of deal or at least anticipate with the problems coming down the pipeline. So that's been so luckily we've raised several $1 million, and that allows us to grow the team from a customer angle. So we're still a few years from market. So our customers now are really people that try the product. And so the mass market adoption will be at a later time.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because we research other companies like you have, and they are not selling the product. They are continuing the process of the investigation, and so that it shows that made that have to be difficult. So next question is going to be for Carolina.
Okay, next question. How complicated is the process of making synthetic meat?
It's very complicated. Yeah. So we have to take cells from animals, and you grow them outside the animal. And so naturally they want to die. So you need to convince them to not only just live, but also live and flourish and be very healthy. So you need to understand what the ingredients are that make them do that, and then not just do that at a small scale, like we say the bench scale in the lab, but then to understand how to go and make a lot of it. So work with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of liters of bioreactor capacity. So how do you make this at a huge scale? So that's it's very interdisciplinary. So you need stem cell biology, you need molecular biology, you need people with a background in genetics, then bioengineering and bioprocess engineering, then chemical engineering, process engineering generally, food, flavor science, food science. So there are a lot of businesses that are kind of coming together. So it's difficult, yeah.
Wow, it's like for the future, the technology is like the key for do this, like this process.
Is the technology the key to doing this?
Uh-huh.
Is that a question? Yes, definitely. So there's, it's certainly not easy, because there are certainly other types of, we'll say, animal replacement products, which are easier to come to market, because you can essentially just go take existing supplies, mix them together into something that tastes kind of like meat, and then sell that. And there are a lot of companies that do that already. We didn't want to be one of those companies. We wanted to actually make the real product, and it's very difficult to do. And we can make it. It tastes right. It's meat. Certainly it's expensive to make, and it's difficult to make it in a high quantity. So at least historically, so we've been able to drop the price quite a bit, and we've been ramping up the volume. So we're solving the problems. Just hard. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. What makes synthetic meat superior to other alternatives that could be cheaper? For example, sausage made of pork or soy.
Well, sausage made of, you say pork first or soy?
There's examples. No examples. No, that
Okay.
is.
Mm-hmm. So there are certainly sausages made from sources other than the pig, if we're talking about pork sausages. So the issue is, at a fundamental level, you're taking plant products and you're changing them to behave like animal products. So there are a lot of reasons that plants taste differently than animals. So the proteins are arranged differently, and the fats, there are different concentrations of different types of fats, fatty acids, triglycerides, and then there are different concentrations of other types of aromatics in there, and from a structure and the taste perspective. So in all that, meat is a very complicated product, and there's any number of ways to go and address that. If you were to just go take some soy protein, whey protein, well, so we'll just say start with soy or pea protein is very common, potato protein, things like that. So if you go take them, then in a lot of cases, they don't solve all of the issues that you want as far as the taste, the texture, the aroma, the appearance, right? So maybe they'll look right, but then they won't taste right in your mouth, or the feeling won't be right. They'll be kind of mushy, or they'll be too tough, or then the fats will kind of be runny, and they won't kind of coat the inside of your mouth. You won't have a creamy experience like you do with pork. There won't be the right flavor of pork, which if you smell it, if you taste it, you know what it is. But a lot of cases with soy, you don't get that from soy, so you have to somehow add that in. So essentially, the taste, at some point you have to compromise, and it's really just a question of what are you compromising on, how much do you compromise, and that oftentimes then relates to your ability to deliver that cheaply or at a high enough volume. So you can make a cheap and a high volume product that doesn't taste much like pork product. That really just depends. If you find a market for it, then great, but I don't think it's going to displace meat eaters. So people eat meat because they want an experience of meat, and if you make something that's not like that, they won't eat your product instead.
Okay. My friends, Maria Jose Donoso will be the last questions.
Okay.
I'm going out a bit of the program right here, but there's something I want to ask you. So you said that the reason that you do all of this is because of climate change and the world, and you wanted to change the world. Well, right now is the whole vegan movement going on. Why focus on synthetic meat, which is a more complicated process than other vegan options, like the ones that you were mentioned just now, like soy?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And so veganism is not new, right? It's been around in some iterations since about, well, thousands of years, frankly.
Yeah.
But in a kind of a more current iteration since about the 70s or 80s. And the numbers kind of like, they kind of go up and down like this. So there are a lot of people that become vegan or vegetarian and then go back to eating meat, because there's kind of a siren song to eating meat. People like it. People will try to be vegan for a time, and a lot of them stay, but a lot of them don't. And so there is a growing appreciation for veganism and a plant-based movement and a variety of animal products. But if you look at the big trends that are happening in the world, meat consumption is still going like this. It's still going up. And you see it's going up across in all geographies. So especially in Asia, it's the fastest growing population on earth. People are coming out of poverty. They're eating more of a Western diet, which means more meat. And so so while there are a lot of people that are switching to a vegan diet, that amount is a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of people who are coming online and eating meat. 95% of the world still eats meat. And that percentage of the world may stay the same, but like the aggregate number is still growing. And so the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization anticipates that we'll need 60% more protein by 2040. So a lot of that protein comes from animal products. And instead of trying to convince people to go to a vegan diet, and I'm very supportive of people who want to do that, we think it's a lot easier to just make the same meat that people eat, but make it in a better way. Asking people to make a change is hard. So if you just have them deliver the same product, then you don't have to have them make that change. And the product is then healthier for the planet, healthier for humans, healthier for animals.
Yeah, I agree with you. People, as much as they know the whole suffering that is going and the destruction that is behind the meat industry, they won't stop eating meat. It's a very reduced population that decide to stop eating it. But the other question that we have is, what are the biggest challenges that you think is your product is against, like customers, the biggest competition, which is like the meat industry as itself, or even government regulations?
What's the biggest challenge? So basically, as like entities that challenge us. So you're saying regulators or?
Yeah, like for example, I read news the other day that there was like something going on about not being able to label it as meat in the name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's no doubt that the conventional way of making meat from animals that is thousands of years old, and that is a multi-trillion-dollar market worldwide, and so those people want to keep that market. They want to keep industrial animal agriculture around because that's how they make their money, their living. So there's a lot of the definition around meat comes from them. A lot of the push on definition of meat, whereas the consumer knows. The consumer knows that the definition of meat is changing. That meat isn't defined as being a piece of a slaughtered animal, but rather it's defined as being a food that provides the sensory characteristics and the cultural characteristics that they want. So when you look at it, when you smell it, when you have it in your mouth, when you taste it, that it delivers that sensory characteristics that you've become accustomed to from meat. And then in your recipes, on your plate, on your table, in your culture, it fills the same space. And so whether it comes from plants or cells like us, or from a slaughtered animal, what people really want is meat. So this trend from the meat industry to try and label meat as being from the carcass of a slaughtered animal is really to protect their jobs. Certainly we want people to have jobs, but our industry is actually going to make a lot more jobs. Yeah. It's an industry that's going to make a lot safer jobs. It's an industry that doesn't also produce zoonotic diseases like COVID-19 that we're all suffering from. So this is a safer industry. There are better jobs, and it's safer it's healthier for everybody.
Yeah. Yes. And in terms of customers, getting people interested in your product, what would you think is the biggest challenge? Because people tend to be a little bit skeptic about synthetic things in general.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of transparency that we try to demonstrate. So it's one of the reasons that our first tasting, we had it in a brewery, specifically when I wanted a beer brewery where we have the big steel vats behind, right? Like you can see the pictures from the event, and you can see that there are these big steel, reactors, right? So they are bioreactors, because you're taking yeast and you're feeding grain to it, and then the yeast creates the alcohol. Well, that's a bioprocess, and there's a bunch of steel and rivets and pipes engaging and steam coming out. And we're all fine eating drinking, in this case, that product of biotechnology. And so I wanted to show that this is what's going to happen in the future. So as you note, so some people are like, well, I don't know about the technology in my food, but we already eat the products of food technology all the time. We drink them, we eat them. Like if you go to the grocery store and buy, these are all developed in the lab. There's a food lab that goes and tests products, your morning cereal or the noodles that you eat, whatever, the energy bar that you eat, they're all tested in lab, they're developed in lab, and then they're developed on a larger scale in a manufacturing facility. Our products are just like that. So there's the fear that people have is sometimes, again, it's being pushed from the existing slaughtered animal agricultural people.
Yes, yeah, I agree with that. And this is our last question.
Sure.
How has the pandemic affected your business right now, and how do you see that is the future for your company in the context of the pandemic, speaking of the zoonotic origin of it?
Yeah, it's a great question, because if anything, it's great for our industry because it highlights the problems with the existing meat supply chain. So we saw, certainly here in the United States, we had a very acute case of meat shortages, and not just meat shortages, but the reason, well, not just that meat was shortage, but because people were literally getting sick and dying from making the meat. And we were showing that the process itself of making meat is unsustainable. It doesn't scale, and it can't survive an era where we have these zoonotic diseases. And also an acknowledgement that that system creates zoonotic diseases. So the specific COVID-19 is possibly derived from bats that people ate, but H1N1, H1N5, so bird flu, swine flu, these are all derived from factory farms. So we have birds, we have pigs, we have these animals kept in very close confinement that are eating an unnatural diet, that are being fed antibiotics and other types of drugs, and then kept in very stressful conditions, which cause them to become ill. And then there's a vector for transmission to humans. So this is a perfect storm. It's almost designed to make us as a population more sick. And so this pandemic is highlighting the fact that that system creates diseases and then is very unsafe for the workers and very unsafe for us. So there has been an increased interest in our field because of it. But I won't say that it's easy to run a company during COVID-19, during the pandemic. It's very difficult, especially since we're a physical sciences company and we have to do work in the lab. We can't work from home. So there's an element of definitely keeping our staff safe. Our team, they tell me what the safety precautions are that they want in place in order for them to feel safe, and then we do that. So that means that we can't necessarily run at full capacity, but that's okay because the safety of my team is paramount.
Yeah, I get it. I think we may have time for one last question. Camila?
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, we did a survey to apply to Chilean people in all the country, and about the synthetic meat. So they actually say that they are a little bit sketchy to eat the meat, the synthetic meat, but there was a lot of people that say that they was worried about the chemics or the taste and all of that, but the most of the people say that they approve to eat meat, the synthetic meat. So if the demand increase, you will be ready to satisfy it?
Well, it depends on what time frame. So certainly not tomorrow because we're not selling, and it will be a couple more years before we're on market. So will we be able to meet the existing demand? Probably not, but that's a good thing. There's a lot of pent up demand, and that then pushes more investment money into my company and then companies like mine to bring that product faster. And this is a very strong narrative because it shows our investors that people want this. People are clamoring for it. They really are interested in eating it, not just as a novelty, but as something that they want to continue to eat. And so I love to hear that. That's great, and we're doing our best to bring it to market.
Yes, but you are planning to sell your product one day?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Or, yes?
Yes. Yeah. So we are a B2C company. So we are making the final product. We're making the first product will be pork sausage, and we'll be delivering that most likely to, depends on what COVID wants to do, but we'll be delivering that to consumers in a variety of outlets. So it could be restaurants, it could be supermarkets, it could be local stores or butcheries, something like that.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for giving of your time and taking the time to answer our questions. It was a privilege and honor ask these questions to the CEO of New Age Meats. We know that for the world, this will be the future of the meat. And last, we hope you have a nice afternoon.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you
all
so
have a nice
much.
afternoon as well.
Thank you so much.
Yes. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Be
Nice chatting with
safe.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.